Welcome to the Holiness Today podcast. On this episode, listen to Sarah Loganbill interview Kristi Senica about her work for the USA-Canada region with the initiative Blessing Our Community.
Well, thank you so much, Kristi, for joining us today on the Holiness Today podcast. I've really been looking forward to getting to know you better and hearing some of your stories. So with that, we'll just jump right in.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So first, if you just want to tell us a little bit about your background, your upbringing, your story of faith, call to ministry, anything like that.
Yeah, so I grew up in the Church of the Nazarene and always kind of loved missions. I loved hearing, when people would come back from work and witness trips and have a Sunday night, showing their pictures on, I think they were like projectors, like the little tiles or whatever. Like, so that's a long time ago. But so, yeah, I always just loved like cross-cultural missions, people who maybe didn't have the same upbringing as me. And it just kind of became something I was passionate about, was able to go on a lot of mission trips throughout high school. And, thankfully, Sam had a similar passion, did the same thing, but different trips and stuff. And so that's kind of how we originally loved cross-cultural missions. And so it wasn't though until 2019 that we were starting to feel like maybe that was actually what we were supposed to be doing. We always said we were just lay people, and now we're not, I guess. And so but we had a lot of people speaking into us over that time and empowering us to lead in the local church. I was on staff at our church, the church that we grew up in. And we just had a lot of people speaking truth into us, helping us see how God had created us for different things, maybe before we even saw it. And so, 2019, Sam was feeling a little unsettled at his job. I was kind of like, I feel like I shouldn't be doing this. There's something else. And we just kind of walked that path to see where God was leading us. And it turned out he was leading us into missions. And we ended up in 2021 moving to the Dominican Republic for 2 years. We served as work and witness coordinators. And then we had a baby there, which we were surprised by because that was not planned. That was not part of our plans, I should say. And we knew that we couldn't host work and witness teams and balance our family life in healthy ways. And so we were looking for a different assignment. And we told Global Missions we would go anywhere. And so we really wanted to stay in the DR, but and we never thought that anywhere would be moving back to the United States. But here we are. And so it's been really good. We've been here since just last August. And yeah, we just love seeing where God is taking us. So yeah, that's kind of our story in a nutshell.
Love it. That's great. So tell us a little bit about what you and your husband are doing now in the States.
So we are helping with the region's vision, which they've called the cycle of resurgence. And the vision is mobilizing all Nazarenes in unity through blessing our community, bringing people to Jesus, and becoming Christ-like disciples. And so a couple of things I love about that and that really drew us to be interested in this position is that it wasn't something that the region just like made up and told all the churches that they should do it, but it was a lot of time spent in prayer and listening to pastors, lay people, all across the region. Like, what is the Spirit speaking to you in this like intentional time of prayer? Where is he leading us as a region? And so those kind of things emerged, those similar things of unity, blessing, bringing and becoming. And so liked that part of it. And then We just really have a heart for loving our neighbors and maybe doing things in creative ways that might be different than what we've been used to. And so that was something we were passionate about when we lived in Illinois before we moved to the Dominican Republic. And so we had really built a really special community with our neighbors there who were not part of the church. And so, which those friendships continue still today. And so helping people see those things in maybe a different cultural context that we're in now was really appealing to us because it's something that we just feel really passionate about. So yeah, so that's kind of what we're doing and
Awesome.
kind of the vision of the region.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll kind of piggyback off that. Let's talk a little bit about the Blessing Our Community initiative. If you
Yes.
want to tell the listeners what it is, how they, as individuals, as their church, as their district, can get involved and spread the news a little bit that way.
Yeah, so this year's emphasis is on blessing our community. And we always say, like, that doesn't mean we're not discipling or bringing people to Jesus. We're just focused on that, like, all together for this year. And so, blessing our community is really, I feel like there's two parts to it. It's about kind of shifting the culture of our congregation to help them see that they can be a blessing in their everyday lives. And so, helping them see that they're invited to be part of God's mission. And so creating that culture where it's not just the pastor or the staff that are reaching out, but also lay people. And so there's that piece of it, kind of creating that culture. And then the other piece is like, how does this local body, one local church, fit into what God's already doing in their community? And so discovering ways to be out of the building among our community, loving our neighbors, compassion towards our neighbors, and it can be expressed in so many different ways. So it's not really a program. We're not going to tell you what to do. If you need some ideas, I'm always happy to share that, but I always kind of preface it with, like, I can't tell you what to do in your community because I don't know your community as well as you do. And so really getting to know your community, discovering maybe it's partnering with a homeless shelter or a pregnancy resource center, or schools. Lots of churches are partnering with schools. And so those are kind of some ways. Some churches are helping create space for community. Loneliness is kind of at an epidemic level across the USA and Canada right now. And so a lot of times we think blessing our community is just physical needs, but there's a lot of emotional and mental and spiritual needs in our communities. And we can be kind of that space to create community for people. And so, yeah, so it doesn't have to be starting something new. It can be partnering with local organizations that are already doing good work and coming alongside them. And what I love about that part is, like, small churches can get involved. It doesn't have to be, this big over the top thing. It can just be, you know what, we're going to go and start serving at the local homeless shelter consistently every week and getting to know people, build relationships with them. And that's really key to blessing our community. This is about building relationships with people outside of the church. Not just to build relationships, but, like, they need hope. They need Jesus. And so we need to be able to have those conversations. We can't do that without relationship.
Absolutely. You had mentioned a couple of ideas, but can you tell us a little bit or give us a couple of examples of things some districts have already done this year?
Yeah, the Mount Vernon field area, all of them kind of got involved to kick off, like, a big serve day, they called it. And so um they went out on one weekend and just loved their neighbors and did different things around the community to be a presence. And so that kind of, like, kicked off for a lot of those districts, um, this ongoing, because that's the thing. We want it to be ongoing. We don't want to this isn't something just for churches to check, we did it. So that's how that area kind of expressed it. But there's so many There's some are doing trainings to equip their local churches. A lot of local churches, like I said, partnering with schools, I feel like is a big one that we're hearing. And what I love about that is we are hearing so many school administrators and teachers open to that. And a lot of people think that schools aren't open to partnering, but it's that relationship. And so I've seen anything from supporting teachers, serving them meals once a month, and just loving them, providing school supplies for them, to people in the church coming in and reading to the students, building relationships that way. Um, Trying to think of some others that there's been a couple others that have, I was kind of jealous about some of these. I wished I had these when I was, had really young kids, but they're like offering just like space to watch kids while the moms can have coffee and conversation. And so they're providing childcare for, a couple hours, and then a space for community. And so the women in some of those churches are really intentional about spending time with the moms too, while they're serving them coffee and helping get conversation going. And so, yeah, those are just a couple that
Oh,
I've
that's
heard.
awesome.
Yeah, I've heard those ones recently, like 3 different churches doing things for moms. And I'm like, I want coffee and conversation.
Yeah, I'll have to reach out to my church about that
Yeah,
one.
right.
I love it. Awesome. Okay, so how can churches and districts get involved if they're listening right now and they're like, wow, we want to do something? What's the first step?
Yeah, so what we've been doing is creating resources to equip. And so we have a community and congregation assessment guide. That's my favorite resource that we have right now. Um, it literally walks you through like getting to know your community, getting to know the strengths and gifts of your congregation, and then kind of merging the two and seeing like where do we fit in. And so the other thing I love about that one is it has some discipleship pieces in it to really like challenge the people who participate in it to start to reframe how they see their community as like the place where God's planted them to be part of his mission. And then we have a training series, a video training series that is done by several people across the region that have been doing this well. And so that's another good one. And then we have like a recommended reading list of just different books of different ways to do this and express it in your local context. So those would be some things that churches could start doing, is engaging with those resources. Me and Sam are always happy to do Zoom trainings online. We do travel to different districts and stuff, but we're also trying to balance family life. So we're pretty much booked up through the end of summer. We have a lot of space for Zoom trainings on just like creating that culture in our congregations. How do we go about doing that? And then kind of walking through the community and congregation assessment. So we're always up for doing those kind of things. And I love being able to connect with local churches and help them dream about where God might be leading them. So
That's kind of a perfect segue into our next question. I was going to ask you, how do you and Sam juggle life as missionaries or in ministry and being full-time parents?
that is a great question. I was just telling our children's pastor, I was like, I texted her, I'm like, I'll let you know whatever when I have my life figured out. And, she responded, can you let me know the secret to that, like figuring out life with kids? And I don't have the answer. I haven't figured it out yet, but we do try to balance, our kids are in school most of the time. It's summer now, so rhythms look different. But yeah, we work when they're at school. Our 1-year-old goes to like a Mother's Day Out program at a local church 3 days a week. And then the other days I kind of juggle, working around nap times and stuff like that. But we definitely don't have it figured out. But we take turns working. How about that? We have this summer, we have like a weekly schedule on our wall of like, okay, this is when you can work, this is when I can work. And
Yeah.
we both need to be in a meeting. And so we need to get a babysitter. So we're juggling it.
No, that's great. I totally get it.
I don't know how well we're juggling it, but I feel
It
like
sounds
because I mean, I hope it's good, but because we're in a new space, we haven't been here a year yet. We're still trying to figure out just life in general in a new space and how it's all going. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, what encouragement would you give to fellow moms from your perspective in life and ministry and just, all the chaos of life?
yeah, I mean, I was thinking about this. I've had people who have empowered me to be a leader. And I know not everybody has, but I would just say, like, God has called men and women to be part of his mission. And so if God is calling you to, if you feel him nudging you to do something, like, man, if you don't have anybody encouraging you, like, call me. I will encourage you because, I even before I worked at our church or became a missionary, I would find ways to engage with people in the community, people in the church. And I just have an attitude of like, well, I'm just going to do it. So, like, um, I know not everybody has that, but I would just empower them to, if God is calling you to do something, just be bold and be brave and take a step of faith in what he's calling you to, and bring the kids along with you. Like, we bring our kids along a lot of places. And so I hope it's discipling them, helping them see how Jesus would want them to live, and just modeling that for them in our daily lives too. So yeah.
Yeah. Living by example
Yeah,
for sure.
exactly.
And what a cool experience. Like the things they'll get to grow up talking about. I
Yeah,
think
I
that's
hope,
amazing.
our older ones are like, oh, mom, dad. They're in the teenage years. And so sometimes we're, totally uncool, but I'm like, okay, I know we're planting seeds and watering them. And yeah.
Yep. As a pastor's kid, I understand, but looking back, I'm so thankful. We were in church,
Yeah.
like most days of the week for something. So,
Yeah, right.
yeah.
They're, oh, we have to do this again. How many times are we going to invite people over?
Right, right.
So
But now I'm so thankful for it.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
okay. So, with what you're doing now and just like your story of growing up and in missions, how do you think God has used your life story to get where you are today?
How is he? I mean, I feel like God has definitely been at work in my life. And um, I'm kind of like a person who Sam is opposite. Like, we need to slow down. And, I'm kind of like, okay, this is what God's calling us to. Let's do it, and sometimes I'm just like maybe a little quicker to make a decision. And he's more like, let's slow down and pray about this a little more. And, um, but yeah, I think it's an adventure when we step out when God's calling us to something. And I feel like we felt that in the last couple years of like, we loved where God had us in Illinois. But when we were like, okay, we're going to take this big risk and step out, like quit jobs, sell our house, and I know he doesn't call everybody to that. So that's not what I'm implying. But when he does call us to do something and we take that step of faith um, and are obedient, it really is, it's not easy all the time, but it's an adventure and it's fun. And man, it's such a joy. Even through the hard times, it's still a joy. And so I don't know, I hope people see that in our lives, that like we are following what Jesus is asking us to do, even if it is hard, but it's also a joy. I would want people to see that.
Absolutely. Is there anyone in your life who has influenced or impacted your life and ministry and where you guys are at today?
Yeah. So Scott and Emily Armstrong, they are missionaries. And they were very instrumental in being like, we see this in you. We connected with them as I was starting a partnership for our church, like a missions partnership. And so we connected with them in that way. And even just recently we were talking and they were like, well, we see this in you, and it makes sense that you'd want to do this and this because that's how God has wired you. And just like, oh, I didn't think about that. Like, they've just been so good at um, just modeling what it looks like to be faithful, and then also empowering us and encouraging us. And then we had several pastors at our home church that really like spoke into both Sam and I of like, we see this in you. We always tell people our lead pastor asked Sam to be an interim pastor at one of our campuses, probably like 10 years ago, and we laughed at him. And so and so here we are.
That's beautiful. That's
Yeah.
great. Okay, so one question I specifically have is just,
Okay.
would you mind telling me one of your favorite memories or stories from when you were serving in the Dominican?
Oh man, there's a lot of good ones. We had so much fun there, like with teams, with the team there. I mean, I just had a memory come up, like, when we got there, we knew a little bit of Spanish, but basically the other missionaries were like, "Good luck. Go get a cell phone," and, all this stuff, and, so we just had to figure it out, so that was fun. I had a memory come up in my, Facebook memories of, like, the first time we went to the outside market, and I wanted to buy, like, 3 peppers, and they gave me 3 pounds of peppers, and so I had, like, a giant bag. Um, yeah, we had fun. So, it was actually really a gift because when we moved there, there wasn't any teams coming because of COVID. And so we got to really build some really strong relationships with local leaders during that time and get to know them. And um, yeah, we love them and they're just so fun. And still, we text each other, FaceTime regularly, and it was just, we had a lot of good memories and adventures of making fools of ourselves, probably sometimes when we're trying to communicate. That happened a lot, but yeah.
I'm
It was
sure, but what an experience too.
Yeah, yeah, it was so fun.
Amazing. Okay, I'm going to ask you a random fun question that we like to
Okay,
do.
okay.
What is a little known fact about you or a hobby that you enjoy? Just something personal about Kristi.
I mean, I'm a pretty open book, so I don't know if I have any hidden secrets, but I do really love to travel, and I do love trying other foods. I'm not afraid to do that. So I probably love food too much, but I do but I do
Don't we
love
all?
yeah, right? I do love exploring other cultures and um traveling. I always am like everywhere I go, I'm like, could I live here? I think I could. I think I God has gifted me with the ability to make anywhere home. So I guess that would be my I don't know if it's a fun fact, but
No, yeah, that
who I
definitely
am.
is. Last thing, we kind of talked about blessing our community earlier, but if you want to give a shout out or a plug, or just let us know anything else about the initiative and how to spread the word and get involved, feel free to let us know.
Yeah, so all of our resources are on the USA Canada region website. So people can check them out there. And then if anybody wants to connect, they can email me at ksenica@nazarene.org, and it's KSENICA at nazarene.org. Um, and yeah, and just don't be afraid to take risks in trying something to love your neighbors. Um, it's okay if you try something and it doesn't work the first time, but I'm kind of like, I would rather all of us take some risks for the kingdom um, than to not do anything to show our neighbors God's love. So I would probably leave with that. Do some training, connect with us, and then be bold.
Beautiful. Well, Kristi, thanks so much for taking the time to answer some of our questions today and help us get to know you a little bit better. It's been an absolute
Thank you.
joy.
Yeah, same. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for listening to the Holiness Today podcast. If you enjoyed this production and wish to hear more, visit holinesstoday.org/podcast or find us on Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts.